Good afternoon. Today we are working on PO51, continuing working with the slope and the graphing. We're just going to be coming at it in a different way. So yesterday's objective, we talked about our slope. Remember that slope is how a line moves across the coordinate plane. So in CO50, we talked about what the slope is. We talked about different ways to find the slope. We had 3 different ways to find the slope. We had the change in y over the change in x. We had vertical change over the horizontal change. And we had rise over run. So today we're going to add in the slope formula, which goes along with it. So we know that there was the change in y over the change in x, which is what we talked about in the last objective. So today we're going to add the formula for that, which would be y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. We use the formula for when we don't have the graph and we're just given 2 ordered pairs. So we could use the rise over run, the counting, when we have the graph present. But now we're going to learn how to do it with just the 2 ordered pairs. So it doesn't matter which ordered pair you start with, you just go the same way for y and x. Also, double check that the y values are in the numerator, they're the rise, and the x values are in the denominator, that's the run. So y is always on top, x is always on bottom. So we're just going to jump right in, because I know people are saying, what is that 2 and the 1? I don't get it. We're going to jump in and do the examples, and it's all going to become a whole lot clearer. So I'm going to erase this so I can move it up. So we have our formula. I'm going to write it again. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So when we get our 2 ordered pairs, the first thing we do is we graph it. So I've got 2, 1, and then I have 3, 5. I draw my line. I draw the arrows because I know it keeps on going. The slope, it tells us what that incline is or decline to keep it moving across that coordinate plane. So that's my first one. Second step is we're going to practice the slope that we did with the rise over run from the last objective. So I'm reading from left to right. I hit this point first. I'll use a different color. I go up 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going up, so I know it is a positive 4. I go over 1. So my slope is 4 over 1. That's great. We know how to do that. We did it in yesterday's objective. Today's objective is saying, all right, we're going to use that as our practice for the slope, and we're going to use it to make sure that we are doing the formula correctly, because the formula is super easy to make simple mistakes. But if you do it correctly, you will get the exact same slope. That slope of a line, there's only one slope for every line. So if we do it correctly, we get the exact same slope. If you do it incorrectly, you get a different slope. And that's when you say, oh, what did I do wrong? Did I graph incorrectly? Did I subtract incorrectly? So we need our first step using the formula. We have 2 ordered pairs. We decide which one we want to be pair 1 and which one is pair 2. Doesn't matter which way we go. You could do the first one, you could call 2, and the second one, you could call 1. Doesn't matter, because when we work with negative numbers and then we divide by a negative number, it turns positive. It all works out in the end. So let me show you if I put 2, 1 as my first pair and 3, 5 as my second pair. I know I want to do, we have our x and our y. always is x first, then the y. So I want y2, which is the 5, subtract y1, which is my 1. That y is always on top. I'm going to put the x's on the bottom. So x2 is the 3, x1 is my 2. So I have 5 minus 1 over 3 minus 2, which gives me 4. 5 minus 1 is 4. 3 minus 2 is 1. Oh, I get the exact same slope. Now what if I do it the other way, and I called this pair 2 and this pair 1? Am I going to get the same slope? Let's check and see. So I need y2 minus y1. Oops, I already made a mistake there. Claire, do you know what mistake I made?
You did the x.
I did the x instead of the y. See, even when teachers go too fast, we make mistakes. So y2, because here's my 2, here's the y. So 1 minus y1 is 5. And then I have x2, which is my 2, minus x1, which is the 3. So 1 minus 5 gives me a negative 4. 2 minus 3 gives me a negative 1. What is a negative divided by a negative?
Positive.
It is a positive. Look at that. 4 over 1, 4 over 1, 4 over 1. My slope is always the same. If you do your math incorrectly, you get a different slope. So this is why we are really practicing how to use this formula, because on the test, you're not going to have the graph to double check your work. So you have to know how to use this formula on the test. You will not have the double check of the graph to say, oh, I made a mistake, I didn't get the same slope. So let's do another one together to make sure we are understanding this. Let's do our next one. I like to just go in order and just say, my first pair is my 1 and my second pair is my 2. You could flip it. It's okay. You might have to work with negative numbers. You just have to be comfortable with that. So first step, I'm going to graph my first ordered pair, 0, 4. I'm going to graph my second ordered pair, 3, 5. I'm going to draw my line, put my arrows because it is a line. Now I'm going to find my slope on the graph. I go up 1, so I know my rise is a positive 1, and I go over 1, 2, 3. So I got my slope to be a positive 3. Now I'm going to check with the formula. Am I going to use the formula correctly? So I start with my y's, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, and I do my math. 5 minus 4 is 1, 3 minus 0 is 3. I get 1/3 and 1/3. I did it correctly. Let's look at our next one. First ordered pair is the 1, second ordered pair I'm putting as the 2. You can flip it, whatever works for you. I'm going to graph it. I'm at -2, +1, and I'm at 4, -5. Draw my line. I can tell right away, all of a sudden my line is going at a decline. I know it's going to be a negative slope. So I hit my -2, 3 first. I go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I know it's a -6 because I went down. And now,
It's a -2, 3.
yeah, I did not graph that correctly. Thank you, Claire.
Yeah.
So let's try this again. -2 up to the 3. And then we have 4 down to the -5. That looks better. I'm going to take a breath and go slower. Let's count this again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I went down, so I know it is a -8. And I go across 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Am I done, Claire?
Is that simple?
I have to simplify. I need to divide out that 2. So I have a -4, 3 is my slope. Remember to carry across that negative. A lot of times I have people that put negative on their first slope and they forget to make their simplified slope a negative. Don't forget that. Now let's check using our slope formula. y2 is -5 minus y1, which is a 3. Then I have 4 minus -2. I'm going to put the parentheses around that -2 so I know where my minus is and I know what is negative.
Wait,
Confused?
No, the 1 and the 2 are just. Wait, so the 5 goes before the 3.
Yeah, because I called this one my second pair. So we always put,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter which one you call your second pair, as long as you keep it consistent. If I put the -5 first in this one, I have to put the 4 first for the x.
Yeah.
If I put the 3 first for this one, then I have to put the -2 first. Yeah.
So that's why I just did.
So -5 minus 3 gives me a -8. 4 minus -2. When we subtract a negative, we are adding our positive. So 4 minus -2 is actually 4 plus 2, which is 6. I need to simplify it, and I get that -4/3. Same slope. So let's look. I did one more when I was in class. So Claire, I'm going to have you come up and you get to graph this one, 4, 3. So let's see how we're doing, because that is the last one that I worked out together with our class. So graph the 4, 3 and graph the -5, 2. -5, 2. And that is why we never eyeball it and say it looks like this would be where the slope is, because it's never perfect. Okay, so using that, what would our slope be?
You have to go up 1. And go over 9.
Yep. So positive 1/9. Now let's use our formula and see if we get the same answer.
So, 2
Mhm.
minus 3
Yep.
over 5 minus 4.
Yep.
So that would be -1 over -9.
And we're not done yet because it's a negative divided by a negative.
So we have to change it into a positive.
Yep,
So
because negative divided by negative, and yep, circle that so we know what your final answer is. So that's how we knew -1, -9 is the same as 1 over 9, because a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So you're going to do these last two on your own, and the second page is more of the same. So on that second page, we just have 9 problems of doing the exact same thing. I did have people point out that this middle one on top, when we graph it, -4, 2, and 2, 2, it is, yeah. So if we are going to graph this, am I going up or down at all?
it's just 0
No,
with 0.
it would be 0, and I go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it'd be 0 over 6.
Yeah.
So when I subtract it, 2 minus 2 over 2 minus that -4, I get 0 over 6. I could leave it at 0 over 6, or only because it's a zero on top, I could just call it a zero slope. A zero slope I know is that perfectly horizontal line like that. I personally stick with the 0/6 because I like to always make sure I have my rise over my run. Don't even pretend. You. Too many illnesses going around, huh? Okay, so this would be a zero slope because it's 0/6. You can leave it as the 0/6 and you would get that correct. So all the rest are doing the exact same thing. If you continue to have questions, make sure you come and see me because we need to understand how to use the slope formula. If you are watching this from home, I hope you're well. I hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful day.